Hey there guys, in today's video I am going to be showing you how to build a snuffle mat, which is a fun foraging activity that you can use. I'm actually going to be making mine for my dog Gunner, so if that is something you guys want to see, you want to make sure to stick around, because that's going to be coming up right after this. Hey there guys, this is Jack over at Hi Red Bird, where I am tirelessly working to find new ways to make the keeping of exotic animals and pets more exciting, more affordable, and ultimately more enjoyable. And in today's video, I wanted to show you guys how to build this snuffle mat. Now this is a fun foraging activity. I'm making it for a dog, but it can be used for a wide variety of animals. It's pretty easy to put together in an afternoon, and it is completely customizable. So you can choose which aspects you want to include for your particular animal. Now, to make this, I ended up using 1 yard of fleece in 3 different colors to make a grand total of 4 snuffle mats. Now, that being said, I quilt. I sew more than the average person, and I am actually really good at getting every last scrap of fabric to be usable. If you are not that comfortable, I'd recommend having at least half a yard of each of the different fabrics that you want to use, the different colors of fleece, in order to make just one of these. And obviously you can also customize the size of the mat itself and the components. So just make sure that you have the amount of material you need in order to put this together for what you are looking for. But I am going to give you guys the measurements of everything I use to build this one right here. Another thing I need to point out, when you are using fleece as an enrichment opportunity, there is a possibility for ingestion. If your animal likes to chew on the fleece, to tear that apart, if they're potentially ingesting that, that could be hazardous. So I definitely recommend you use your best judgment in providing this opportunity, and you make sure that it is a supervised opportunity whenever you provide this. Now, this is a great opportunity to provide foraging, and foraging is one of the best forms of enrichment for so many different animals for a multitude of reasons. It's a completely natural behavior. It encourages your animal to use a variety of different senses. In different parts of the snuffle mat, maybe they'll be able to see the treats. Other parts, maybe they won't be able to directly see them, but they can smell them, they can look around for them. So there's a lot of different senses that are going to be acted upon. If your dog is notorious for eating their food too fast, if they have potential issues with that, you can use a snuffle mat to slow them down. You can use that to provide a little more interest when they are eating or getting any kinds of treats. You can get them a little more active. So there are a variety of benefits. Another really nice thing about this is when you are done with it, every single time you use it, you can then throw it in the washing machine. So you make sure that it is nice and clean. And I definitely recommend using the washing machine to make sure that it is clean. Using the washing machine before you even use it. Because as you guys will see when we're putting this together, you can get little bits of fluff right where you do those cuts. Putting it through the washing machine is going to agitate those areas to get any of those loose bits off, so it will just be a little bit safer for your animal. But again, I cannot stress this enough. Make sure that you are observing your animal as they are interacting with any kind of enrichment, not just this, to make sure what you are providing them is safe. So with all of that being said, let's go ahead and jump into how we're going to be putting this together.
All right, so I am going to be starting this snuffle mat with a base of 18-inch by 24-inch fleece. I am going to be doing the large grassy area first because that is going to take up a lot of the room on the mat. I like to start with the bigger items that use bigger pieces first. I am going to be using 2 1.5 by 12-inch strips of fleece. I'm going to be sewing those down, and that is where we are going to attach the grassy area. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind when you're doing this. You're going to obviously be sewing it down on both ends, but you're also going to need to sew it down a few places in the middle. You want to make sure that the amount of space that is left is not going to be an amount that leaves your animal getting stuck. So if you have an animal with a larger muzzle, you can probably go a little bit bigger. If you have a smaller dog with a smaller muzzle, you're going to want those spaces to be a little bit closer together so there's no risk of getting stuck. You guys can see that I did this in a contrasting thread color. I did that solely to show you guys how the stitching should be done. It has nothing to do with me being lazy and not wanting to change out the thread color. Now I'm going to take these 1.5 inch by 10 inch strips and I'm going to fringe knot them onto the first part. So you can see I fold it over, put that folded side through, and then feed the tails through the loop that I have created. I like doing fringe knots here because, as you guys can see, they stay a little more upright. So to me, it looks a little bit more like a grassy field, which would then give my animal the opportunity to snuffle around in the grass. Since we do live in an apartment, we don't have a backyard, so this is at least something that my dog can look around in, and I can feel better about this. And that's going to be part of it. This color combination that I chose was done just for me. You guys can use whatever colors you want for your fleece, for your mat. Here I'm going with the brown and then 2 shades of green. For the grassy area, I am going to use 10 strips of that grassy fabric per long row. So 5 of the light green, 5 of the dark green, 4 each side. I'm just going to keep fringe knotting down. When you start to run out of space on one of those sections, you can try to squeeze them together a little bit more. But you can see with the fringe knots, it ends up being very nice, very full. If you don't like doing the fringe knots, one thing you can do, you can always just square knot them. You just want to make sure that you do a pretty tight knot. You don't want your animal to be able to take this apart. Now that is going to give you a little bit of a different look. You guys can see that it sits a little bit flatter. It's not as upright. That is still going to give you the opportunity to hide those food items in there. And part of it is just going to be how you position the mat. You guys can see I can easily just brush them all to one side. They'd be mounded on top of each other. That by its own would be very, very full, very easy to hide a variety of different things in. Now you also want to make sure that you're paying attention to the stretch in the fleece. The fleece does have a little bit of stretch. So you just want to make sure you're paying attention to that when you're putting those things in. You don't want to stretch anything way too far. But just attaching these all the way down, you can see those little sections that we created make it really, really easy. The sections that I created were not all uniform size, and your animal isn't going to judge you on whether or not they're all uniform size. The important thing to pay attention here is that all of those sections are designed so that I'm not worried about my animal getting caught. They're all designed with safety and this enrichment in mind. And that's the important thing that you need to focus on. And you guys can see that whether you use the fringe knots or the square knots, you're going to get a wide variety of different places that you can put those different treats, different food items in to encourage your animal's natural behaviors. Now, the next thing that I want to build, which does take a good amount of space as well, is going to be a series of flaps. Now, I'm going to be using alternating colors. You guys can see I'm going to sew them down on one side, and I am going to overlap these flaps so that you can build the difficulty of hiding these food items. I'm alternating the colors here because that was a little more interesting for me, but you can use whatever pieces of fleece you have if you want to do them all one color. This is going to be one of those things your animal can't see the treats as well, so they're going to be dependent on things like scent to find those food items. So changing the colors on this is completely up to you. You can also change the spacing on your flaps. If you want to push them a little bit closer together, they're going to work a little bit harder because they're having to lift more pieces. If you want to spread them further apart, that's fine as well. When you are sewing these down, you just want to make sure that you're not accidentally sewing any of the pieces together. Pay attention to where your seams are going to fall. The easiest way to get around this is to start with the very bottom piece and then build all of your flaps on top of that. So all of the seams should go above each other and you won't sew any of the flaps down or to each other. So it's really, really easy to do, and it doesn't have to be the most accurate stitching in the world. You guys can see that all of my flaps ended up being a little bit different in terms of how far apart they are. Again, your animal is not going to judge you on how accurate these are. All of these flaps were 5 inches by 4 inches, and I used 3 of each color. Now, you can use this in a variety of different ways. You can just put food inside the flaps. You can fold the flaps in on themselves to increase that difficulty. You guys can see I started to veer off a little bit, and that's going to be completely fine as long as it's not going to be something that your animal can get caught in, that you're increasing the risk of ingestion hazards. You guys can see as I've been working with this fleece, from cutting it, from sewing it down, I did get a little bit of lint and fuzzy from right off the edge of those flaps. So I definitely recommend throwing this in the washing machine before you use it for your animal. Now, the next thing I wanted to build, and this is going to be using some of our scraps, is going to be a series of pockets. So I've got a 5-inch square and a 3-inch square of fleece, and I'm just going to sew those down. I can sew through the center, I can sew through the corners, but the goal here is just to create a variety of different little pockets. Now, I'm just using squares for this, but using whatever size scraps you have left over at the end of this project. Maybe you want to use rectangles. You could use circles. If you were feeling very ambitious, you could trim things like leaves or hearts, really fun shapes. But you guys can see once you do those sewing, here I just did a cross over those squares. I've got a variety of different pockets that I can hide little food items in. The last thing I wanted to show you guys how to do is going to be a crisscross. And I always like to save this for the end because this is going to be using some of our smallest pieces of scraps. These pieces that I'm using here are 1.5 inches by 5 inches long. 2 of them is all it takes to make a crisscross. I'm going to take one piece of fabric, sew it down on the sides, then take the other piece of fabric, lay it over it, and sew it down on the sides, which creates all of these little crannies that I can hide different food and treat items in. I also love to save this at the very end because this is a great way to finish off your Snuffle mat. If you have a lot of empty space, you can put in multiple crisscrosses. They can fit in a variety of different spaces in different areas. So this is a great way to make sure that you are utilizing as much space as you want to. And I think it's really important to point out that you can choose not to use any of these components. You can choose to do the entire mat with just the grassy field or just the crisscrosses. It is completely up to you. Now, when we are done with this, you guys can see we have a variety of different ways to encourage our animals to look around for food, all the different things that are created. So with the grassy field, you can just sort of lightly put those pieces under there, layer that grass on top of that so that they can find it. You can even tuck it under those initial pieces we sewed down to make it a little more challenging. You can put food items under the flaps. You can roll the food items into the flaps just to increase that difficulty level. You can use those pockets. The smaller pockets are great when you're first starting out because your animal will still be able to see those food items. Then you can upgrade to the bigger pockets if you want to increase that difficulty level. And then, of course, the crisscross is going to be a great way. You've got a variety of different places that you can just sneak that food in. Now, I do recommend using a dried food or dried treats for this because obviously this could get very, very messy if you didn't utilize that. And when you are done with this, you're going to want to shake it out to make sure you get anything else out. And you can throw this in the washing machine as needed to ensure that it is clean. But once again, I cannot recommend enough that when you provide this for your animal, make sure you're supervising their interaction with this. But it is a whole lot of fun. This can be a way that you provide just small enrichment treat items, or you could even use this to provide maybe one of your animals' entire meals. They can get their entire serving of food in the Snuffle mat. And you guys can see it provides a variety of different ways that you can play with and interact with your animals. And it's also a lot of fun just to watch your animal interacting with their toys and their food in such a way. You can see that they are mentally stimulated. They are engaged with what is going on. Obviously, this is a lot more exciting than just getting your food in a bowl. This is my dog Gunner, and you can see that he is very, very excited about this. He is looking all over the mat. He is finding the food in all of the different places where he has gotten it. He's also finding the food on the places where I dropped it on the ground next to it. But this is just a great way to provide for your animals. So if you like this video, go ahead, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Share this with your friends if you think this could be useful for them. This would be a great Christmas present for any of your friends with a dog or other animals. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I hope I get to see you guys next time.
I do need to say thank you to my Patreon patrons for helping to make these videos possible. You can find out more by visiting Hi Red Bird on Patreon or clicking the link in the description section down below if you would like more information. Thanks!